Growing food doesn't have to be complicated. If you're new to gardening, it may seem that way. You hear people throwing around words like cross-pollination, root-bound, indeterminate, and hardening off, and you feel like they're speaking a different language. Have you ever seen the episode of Friends where an encyclopedia salesman tries to sell Joey a set of encyclopedias? It's one of my favorites. The salesman asks, "Do your friends have conversations and you just nod along, but you aren't sure what they're really talking about?" Then it shows Joey thinking back to all the times he was in a situation like that, and it shows, conversations he had with the other people, his friends. If you haven't seen it, I'll add it to the show notes. I feel like beginner gardeners must feel like that when they're listening to people who have been gardening for a while. In this episode, I'm going to attempt to help you feel a little bit less overwhelmed and hopefully a little bit more confident by the end of it. This is episode 18. This is the Homesteading for Beginners podcast, and I'm Mona Weathers, your homesteading mentor and coach. If you desire to establish a solid foundation for your homesteading journey, then you are in the right place. I'm here to show you how, in a way that is healthy for you, your family, and your community. I'll share stories from the past 20 years of my own journey and offer you actionable steps you can take to start and maintain a healthy homestead. In episode 11, I talked about my thoughts on jumping in blindly to the homesteading life, and I cautioned you not to start without some planning in two areas: when it involves animals and when it involves the possibility of wasting money. But today I'm going to say the opposite by telling you to just do it. Just get started. This is not a just plan and then get started scenario. Here are 3 reasons why you should start now and not wait. Number 1, seeds want to grow. We just have to create a nice little bed for them to grow, but their will to grow is strong. And in many cases, you don't even need seeds to grow food. There are things called cuttings and propagation. Those are things where you get a piece of another plant, a branch of another plant, and then stick it in dirt or water, and it will grow roots. So the will for plants and food to grow is strong. Number 2, it's inexpensive to get started. Seeds are very inexpensive. Plants, the cuttings that I was just saying, can be even less expensive. A lot of times you can get those for free. People want to give away their seeds a lot, and sometimes you can get certain seeds from the grocery store. There are different things that you want to consider with that, but really when I'm speaking right now, I'm just speaking to the people that really overcomplicate this situation. Food wants to grow, and you can grow it. And number 3, you will only become a better gardener through failures and successes. So the sooner you start, the faster you will develop this skill. Each year, you'll learn more about what works and what doesn't. So the sooner you get started, the better. I think I've shared this story on the podcast before, but it took me 4 years to finally get my garden started in our homestead in California. Each year we had some reason I didn't get started. No fencing, the ground wasn't right. And every year I was just more and more frustrated. So finally one year we had some rebar on the property from the previous property owner. There was just some rebar that was on our property till we left. But I finally took 4 pieces or a few pieces of that rebar, and I just staked my ground. I laid them flat onto the ground and made like a 10 by 12 or something. And I said, my garden is going there. So I just decided I was going to be a gardener at that moment. And that is where my first garden was. And we kept expanding pretty much every year after that. I think that one was there for a while before we expanded, but we expanded a couple times over the years. Now, I'm not saying that planning isn't useful. It is definitely useful in all situations, but the nice thing about gardening is it really doesn't require a lot of money investment, especially if you stay on the small scale. Yes, you might need to buy something to help your soil become better, or buy soil for raised bed type garden, but really it doesn't cost a whole lot to start gardening. But if planning and research is causing you to not take action, I want you to forget all the gardening jargon, all the things that people tell you need to do. I mean, don't forget it, but just don't focus on that. Don't focus on trying to do the right thing, and just understand seeds and plants have a strong will to live, and just start planting. Right now, for many of us around the world, we're experiencing winter. So you may need to wait to start your garden outside, but I'm going to share some things you can do in a minute during the winter. But if you're in a good area where the weather is good for planting, then I want you to forget that jargon I just said, and I want you to find some good soil mix from the plant nursery at your local hardware store or plant store, and get some seeds or get some plants and just start. Don't go crazy with the size of your garden like I mentioned before. When you're learning, smaller is better, and grow food you like to eat. That's the other thing. Winter has always been my time for planning for the upcoming year's garden. I love dreaming about what I'm going to grow and how I want to improve my garden area. So here are some things you can do during the off-season months. Number 1, get a garden journal. Start recording your gardening dreams. Make a list of the seeds that you want to purchase, and draw plans of your garden. If you're in the city and live in an apartment, you can still do this exercise. You can grow things on balconies and in windowsills, or you can become a part of a community garden. I also have a list of homestead and garden journals and notebooks in my Amazon storefront. So if you are looking for some ideas, the first one at the top is called a puka pad, and it's a composition notebook that I actually use myself. Those are the ones I have. They're just a composition notebook, but it has a pretty design on the covers of the 3 set. So there will be a link in the show notes if you want to go and check those out. The next thing you can do in that journal, you can write 3 to 5 foods that you and your family like to eat. And then use that information, use that list to search the seed catalogs, or ask around your friends who may be gardening if they have any of the seeds that you're looking for, and just start the purchasing process, because a lot of these seed companies do end up selling out pretty quickly, especially the ones like Baker Creek. Baker Creek Seeds is very popular. They have some really cool heirloom seeds. They're a little bit on the more expensive side, but they also send to Mexico, because my daughter lives in Mexico, and she was really excited to find out that they ship at least to Mexico. I don't know how far they ship to. But there are other companies. Territorial Seeds is another one. There are a ton of companies that sell quality seeds. So just don't get too hung up on what the type of seeds are right now. They don't have to be heirloom. They don't have to be organic. I think we get really hung up on those things, and then we end up, a lot of people tend to not move forward because they don't know what type of seeds to buy and that sort of thing. But there are actually things that you can get from the grocery store that will grow, and they're perfectly fine. At this time, it's also a good time during this off season to figure out how you want to grow your food. If you want to grow it in ground, or do you want to grow it in a raised bed, which a raised bed is where it's above the ground. It starts above the ground. Usually it touches the ground, but raised beds can also not touch the ground and be raised up off of the ground. But a lot of times they have access to the soil beneath. So you can grow in a raised bed. You can grow in grow bags. These are felt type bags that you can get on Amazon, which I also have in my Amazon store, so you can check that out. There's some grow bags in there. You can grow in almost anything. So this would be just a really good time to decide how you want to grow. It can be a combination of things as well. You can buy really fancy raised beds and have a few grow bags. That's what I have right now. You can even grow in straw bales. That takes a little bit more preparation and understanding, but there's so many ways you can grow your food. So this would be a really good time to decide how you want to grow food. This would also be a good time to ask around your friends and neighbors and see how they might be growing food if they have a garden as well. Real quick, I wanted to share something that I think you'll be really excited about. I am making the Homesteading for Beginners workbook available to you now. In this workbook, I guide you through the beginning steps of your journey. Even if you've already started your journey, this will help you to establish some things that you may have missed in the beginning. But this is specifically for beginner homesteaders who are in the dreaming stages and a few years into their journey. This digital workbook is only $7, but it will return to the $9 price after December 15th. Pick up your copy today by going to healthyhomesteading.com/workbook, and you'll be able to purchase it there. So let's recap. The 3 reasons why you should start now are because food wants to grow. Plants want to grow. All your job is to figure out how best to allow them to grow. So just believing that your plants want to grow might just change how you think about it and shift your thinking a little bit. Seeds and plants are inexpensive generally. It's a low barrier of entry to grow food. And as long as you stay on the smaller scale. If you go too big, it can get really expensive. The other thing, number 3 of that, 3 reasons why, would be you only will become better if you get started and go through failures and successes and continually go through those until you become a master gardener, or whatever the level you want to be. If you just want to be a competent gardener, that is fine too. The next 3 things that you can do, because a lot of us are during the off season right now, so there's 3 things that you can do during the off season of gardening, is you can get a journal. Number 1, you can get a journal. Start recording your gardening dreams, make lists, and that sort of thing. Number 2, pick 3 to 5 foods you want to grow and find seeds for them, or plants, or just have a plan to get plants for them if you're getting cuttings or them from the store. Like, they will be only available at a certain time, so you would just make a written note that you're going to purchase these when the time is right. And then number 3, decide how you're going to grow your garden, like in what containers, or if you're going to grow them in ground, like decide which way you're going to grow or what combination of ways you want to grow your garden. So those are the 3 things. The other thing I might add to that is you will need to keep your garden protected from the wildlife. So you may want to consider, if you don't already have some sort of barrier, some sort of fencing in mind. I've started gardens without that, so don't feel like that you need to have fencing. But if you have a lot of deer in your area, or rabbits or groundhogs and those sorts of animals, you might want to consider having something to protect your food, because it is frustrating when you start growing something and then something comes and eats it overnight. So just to have that in mind. There are things that you want to consider too about other pests that could affect your growing your garden, but like I said before, I just want you to get started. I want you to learn as much as you can. And the only way you're going to do that is by starting. And If something comes up, that's the time to do some research. Pay attention to your garden as well. When you are starting a garden, I think the number one thing that possibly beginners do is they don't pay attention enough to their garden. I don't feel like it's the opposite where people are over paying attention to their garden. I feel like it's that they don't pay enough attention. So getting a rhythm in mind, having that, we're thinking right now, we haven't started the garden yet for many of us, but for many of you, but think about that you're going to have a rhythm of going to your garden every day, at least once a day. Even if you don't need to water it every day because of the sprinkler system or whatever you have in place for watering, or just natural water. But you have to go and look and see what the garden is doing every day, because things can take quick turns pretty fast. And if you're not aware of what's happening, and then you go out and 3 days later or whatever, you haven't checked it on it in 3 days, then you kind of missed the window of like being able to catch things before they go south. If you are enjoying this podcast, I would really appreciate it if you would take a minute to subscribe or follow. By doing this, you will be helping the podcast to be seen by more people, and I do love reading nice reviews too. Don't forget to visit healthyhomesteading.com for more information on how I can serve you. Until next week, I want you to keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep planning for your homesteading success.